Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of So Rare First Pitch here on FSI. I'm Alex Hooper, bringing you 10 players to seek out, keep an eye on, to monitor when the So Rare MLB, oh my gosh, the market opens tomorrow as I'm recording this. By the time you actually see it, it might actually be today when it opens, or it might already have been open. But either way, we don't know how fast these players are going to trickle into the market. So we don't know what the supply is going to be like. First mints are going to have a higher price, so they might be a little indicative of where you can go, but you might be able to get some deals on those number one mints. If not, keep an eye, see what happens with the number two mints, and then maybe make a decision on number three. I think that's what I'm going to be doing. I think I'm going to go after some number threes, unless I see some really undervalued players who are floating around with that number one mint, get that extra collectability, stuff like that. So again, I'm Alex Hooper. Pop a like on this video, follow the channel if you could. It's going to help us out a ton. We're going to keep bringing content to you. I'm so excited, if you can't tell. If you watched our first two videos, I think I was a little slow moving, which is my general speed, but I'm hyped, man. I can't wait to get underway on Tuesday. Got the home run derby tonight. My guy Jose Ramirez plus 1,400 odds. I think he's going to take it regardless. But yeah, I'm hyped. So let's get into it. That's enough oversharing and hype. Let's take a look at the 10 players I'm going to be really interested to track, and 10 guys. Maybe not all going to fly under the radar. Maybe not all going to be cheap, but some of them will be. And I got some good deals towards the end. We're going to start though with somebody who is pretty popular, and he's the cover boy for the last video as I explained baseball to Europeans. Hopefully I did it well, but here we are. Can you guess who it is by the team, by the homers? It's Fernando Tatis Jr. He is going to have an L5 of 0. He's going to have an L10 of 0. He's going to have an L15 of 0. He's going to have an L40 of 0. So unless you are a big baseball fan, and not one of those European folks coming over from the football product, you may not know that Fernando Tatis Jr. is maybe the best player in the game, top 5, top 3. I think we can settle on top 3, right? When he's healthy and when he's operating how he did last year. Obviously, that's a high bar, but he has not played this year due to injury. He's on his way back. So unless you know the game, I mean, his number one mint, somebody who's getting into this for collectibles and to play is going to bid up Fernando Tatis Jr.'s number one mint. So this isn't a huge under the radar play here, but after a while, I think that price is going to start trickling down. So you can get them at a value a little later once the collectors get out of the way. So, all right, that's number one. That's Fernando Tatis Jr. That's a layup, different sport, but here we are. All right, let's move on to number 2. It's Tristan McKenna. I wanted to get a starting pitcher out there pretty quick. And this is a guy I think is going to fly under the radar because, I mean, if you look at his percentile rankings over here on StatCast, which I'll have a stats video. If you don't know what this stuff is, I'll be hitting you heavy with these sorts of metrics, and I'll explain that once the market opens a little bit. But if you look, 8th percentile in average exit velocity. Tristan McKenna gives up a lot of home runs. Barrel percentage, same sort of thing. He finds barrels. Guys hit the ball far off of him, which is not what you want out of a pitcher. Same hard hit percentage, xERA. These numbers are pretty bad, all right? But Tristan McKenna is actually the 30th best starting pitcher by points per start this season. You wouldn't expect that if you see, how hard he's getting hit. But he gives up a lot of solo home runs, and you can still win ball games. There's no bonus for a shutout. There's no bonus for a complete game other than the innings and the outs that you accumulate. So those sorts of things, they're not going to kill you. It's a bounce back guy. Again, we're talking about under the radar sorts of guys, and his expected WOBA is down 0.146 points. That's a lot. Now to 2.46. Those numbers may not mean a lot to you, but that's a pretty drastic drop rather over the last 50 plate appearances for Tristan McKenna of the Cleveland Guardians. He's a young guy. He's still figuring it out. He's 165 pounds. He might not be able to add too much more weight to that frame, but he's still a developing pitcher, but he's still scoring well for the Matrix, and he's trending in the right direction. So this is a guy who I think, isn't going to be a super expensive player out of the gate. You could see some growth there. You could see some struggles for sure. He still has them, but this is an organization that knows how to develop pitching talent. And Tristan McKenzie's got a long way to go, and he's good enough. He's got the tools. A guy that I've watched plenty. Obviously, I'm a Cleveland guy, and not a ton of bias here because he's not a guy that I'm like crazy obsessed with all the time, but like digging into the numbers, he's a guy who popped just because of where he's trending and where he actually scored on the Matrix. So, all right, moving on, our number 3 player, it's Alejandro Kirk, the catcher for the Blue Jays. There's not a lot of benefit for owning a catcher so far that we're seeing on Sorare. You don't have to roster a catcher. They count as middle infielders, but that might be where the value is. There's going to be some premium guys as middle infielders. We're talking about Tatis when he's back, when he's healthy. There are a couple of other power hitting shortstops, one of which I'm going to get to here in this video. You may be able to figure out who it is based on my screen, but Alejandro Kirk will qualify as a middle infielder. He does DH when he doesn't catch, so maybe a little less subject to some of that rotation that you'll see, the day game after a night game, getaway day sort of stuff. But if you look at these numbers, man, a big time exit velocity guy, big time expected WOBA, doesn't swing and miss a lot, so you're going to get some walks out of him. Great on base percentage guy, great K rate. There's the walk numbers and the slugging percentage in the 90th percentile. He is tied for 3rd in baseball. 21% of his swings are hard hit balls. So when he actually decides to swing, he's a good recognizer of pitches. I got myself in deep in that sentence, but he sees the ball well. He hits the ball when he actually swings. His 401 xWOBA is 94th percentile, as you can see on the screen. A big dip lately. His last 50 plate appearances have not been good, but he's still up over his last 150 plate appearances. So this is a guy who, he's not a big name catcher to begin with, but once you kind of get past those premium shortstop, second baseman to play as your middle infielder, this is a guy who I think can produce for you. You have to watch out for, stretches of games that he's playing. Is he not playing those games? But when you have him out there, he's solid. Here's the dip in the last 50 games, and you can see it here, but over 250, he's doing all right. 11 homers, decent production. So Alejandro Kirk is our number 3 guy. Let's get back to the pitching though. My number 4, AJ Minter, the left-handed reliever for the Atlanta Braves. So I talked a little bit in the first 2 videos, and one of the big things with your relief pitcher spot is closers are going to dominate. Josh Hader is going to blow away the rest of the competition. He's been struggling lately, but still far and away the best points per batter face that you can find, and high strikeout rate guy like that. But AJ Minter is a guy who's going to fly under the radar as well. I mentioned Devin Williams, the setup guy for the Milwaukee Brewers, as he's going to be a good alternative to your closers, maybe someone that people don't target early and can fly under the radar. This is your second in line to Devin Williams, one of those guys who, he's not a closer, so he's not going to get you saves, but he's going to get you holds. He's actually got 23 saves and holds combined over the year. He's the 15th ranked relief pitcher, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you're going to get value here just because he's not a closer. He's 11th in K rate among relief pitchers, so you're still getting those points from strikeouts, which is what you're going to need over and above all. That's going to make the difference in your pitchers is the strikeout rate. So before I do that stats video, if you're not familiar with baseball or don't know what to look at, don't look at Ks per 9, don't look at Ks overall, look at strikeout percentage, K percentage. That's going to be more predictive on who's going to continue to strike people out down the line. So AJ Minter, a nice alternative to some of your relief pitcher options, should fly under the radar, should be pretty cheap off the gate. All right, so let's talk about first baseman, corner infielders. First baseman especially, and you don't have to play first baseman, you can play a third baseman as well, and that's going to add to the player pool. But first base, especially in baseball, you get a lot of guys who they don't separate themselves from the pack. That middle ground is going to be all kind of the same guys. So like this year, you have Paul Goldschmidt, NL MVP candidate. He's, like if he has a 6.0 value above replacement, and it's just an objective metric that means nothing, whatever. You're going to see like a Freddie Freeman at like a 4.5, and then you're just going to get a cluster of guys at like 1.8 to 1.3. And that's like the rest of the group of guys is going to be in there. So there's going to be a lot of people in that in between ground where you can find power at corner infield. That's where you're going to want to spend up to get a little power. But let's look at a couple of guys who can separate themselves from that pack despite being cheap. The first one, Andrew Vaughn, first base and outfielder, so might have double utility for you. And I mean, even if he just plays the outfield, even if he only gets outfield eligibility, he's still a guy who, again, 24, good lineup. He's 6th in that hard hit per swing metric that I brought up with Alejandro Kirk. 20.9% of the time when he swings, it's a hard hit, and hard hits lead to home runs and extra bases. Again, that's a predictive thing, and I'll talk about that in the stats video. But yeah, so not a lot of difference between the first baseman. Vaughn, I don't know how the qualifications for positions are going to work. He does qualify in season-long fantasy baseball. I imagine he would here. But moving on to our number 6 guy, another first baseman, it's CJ Cron. You see right here, 98th percentile, max exit velocity, 86th percentile barrel percentage, 79th percentage expected slugging. That's 115.5 miles per hour is how hard he hits the ball off the bat. And if you're privy to baseball, you see the logo he's wearing on his cap, Colorado Rockies. It means he's going to play half his games at Coors Field. That means more hits. That means more runs scored on average compared to the rest of the league. So Cron, a guy who is overperforming some of his expected stats, if you know what that means, mostly due to the park that he plays in. But he's going to be the higher tier of those guys at first base who don't pop like the Goldschmidts and the Freddie Freemans and the other all-stars that you have. Although CJ Cron might have actually made the all-star team. Not a big name though, and he should fly under the radar price-wise. You should be able to get a nice deal on him and still get plenty of production out of your corner infield spot relative to some of those big spend-ups. And you want to find these margins here in baseball because, like Gator mentioned on the first video, and like we'll mention a bunch of times, the difference between throwing Mike Trout out there and the difference between throwing a CJ Cron out there, although different positions, isn't always going to be a gulf. There are going to be plenty of weeks where CJ Cron outperforms Mike Trout, and that's just the nature of baseball. What happened yesterday does not matter, and I'll talk. That's the thing. I'm going to get really philosophical in the stats video coming up later this week, and it's a random number generator. I've said that before, and I'll get into that a little more. I'm not going to waste your time on it now. But okay, so my favorite first baseman value, Christian Walker, the first baseman for the Arizona Diamondbacks. You see all these red numbers. You see me circling them. X-Woba, big time. Barrel, big time. Great defensive first baseman, apparently, but doesn't chase, walks well, hits the ball hard often. Let's see, 15th in plate appearances per barrel, which again, that's the big guys at the top, the Otanis, the Judges, and it's Christian Walker. He is the biggest underperformer, one of the biggest underperformers relative to his expected stats. So that xWOBA, the XBA, the X slugging percentage, you see the numbers are high, but if you look down here, he's got 22 homers, but he's only hitting 204. His slugging is still 460. His OPS is only 779, but he's still, if you look at these red numbers that indicate those numbers should be higher. So the big thing here is he plays in Arizona. They're trying to solve the issue of not enough offense by getting the humidor out and trying to change the way that, actually it's the opposite, excuse me, too much offense prior. They're trying to find the balance of adding the humidor to not make it a Coors Field situation. And it's overcorrected quite a bit. So only 5 ballparks in baseball are worse for home runs by right-handed hitters. So that is likely what is suppressing a lot of these numbers. A lot of the balls off the bat, talking about speed, trajectory of the ball, means he should be homering more. So that's one thing to be concerned with. But if he, finds his way to another team, or maybe starts outperforming what's going on in the stadium, or if he's on the road, perhaps that's where he's going to rack up these numbers. And I mean, based on his actual performance, these are the numbers that people are going to use to drive the market, are the actual performance. So the 22 homers, people are going to love it, but these numbers, they're going to say, this guy's not that great of a hitter. He's not going to do much other than hitting home runs. But in fantasy baseball, home runs drive your points, first of all, and also he should be hitting a ton more, and he will. Okay, my 2 favorite guys. Actually, I missed one. I didn't pull up his stats, so I'm just going to search it. You're going to watch the magic happen right here. I'm going to type it out. Another starting pitcher for you. It's Dylan Cease of the Chicago White Sox. Here are his numbers. Here are his projected numbers rest of season. Second in strikeout percentage. I talked about that before. Second strikeout percentage behind the Rays' Shane McClanahan, who's another guy who is not a big name, but he would be in this video if he weren't a Cy Young contender. Dylan Cease is getting there. Dylan Cease is coming up from behind. He's really turned it around. His ERA 2.15 and his expected ERA and expected FIP aren't much higher. So he's maybe overperforming a little bit, but he strikes out a ton, and he's just not a big name. He's a guy who you should be able to get a premium on relative to, the Max Scherzers and the, Clayton Kershaw's, Corbin Burns, guys who have won Cy Youngs. Dylan Cease looks like a guy who could get there eventually. That's my number one. If you're going to go for a pitcher, if you can get Dylan Cease on a deal, I would do it, and I would do it fast. I would recommend him much more than Tristan McKenna, but there should be a pretty big gulf in their prices. So, all right, my 2 favorite hitters, the guys that you're going to get the biggest deals for the most production out of. Number 1, it's Jon Berti. All right, we talked about these. He's a middle infielder, so that's where if you want the hitting, Alejandro Kirk is going to top a guy. Look at these numbers. Look at all this blue. He doesn't hit much, but he is 22nd in Sorare points per plate appearance in all of baseball, despite not hitting. And that is because the man steals bases at an unreal pace. I mean, he was on the injured list for a while this year, only played 58 games, came off the injured list, and he's stolen 28 bases already. Steals are at a premium, but I mean, you're getting 5 points per steal now. He'll steal 3-4 bags a game, and he'll get you steady points that way. If he gets on, he's running, and you don't lose points for caught stealing. So he could run every single time, and you'd probably be in a really good position. So again, 22nd in baseball to just all hitters. This guy who is hitting 271, weighted run created plus, it's a number relative to 100 being league average. So he's above league average, and that's just as a hitter. That's his hitting numbers and not his stolen bases. So no one knows a lot about Jon Berti, and he's not going to be expensive. And relative to some of the middle infielders you can get, he's going to do a lot. But all right, my number 1 guy, not going to be too cheap. He's not an unknown. He's an all-star, but he's underperforming so much. And you can have situations, and there's his name at the top of the screen. I blew my T's there. When you have underperformers, and again, I'll talk about this in the stats video, like, you can be underperforming, but what is expected, your expected number still could be horrible. Corey Seager is a guy who, if you look at all of these, we're in the red on the expected stats, and you see a nice rise in his last 50, kind of up and down. He is a guy who is underperforming greatly, but is still doing well, which means what is actually expected of him is huge. If you were actually hitting the numbers that he should be hitting, and generally players regress to the mean, he'd be blowing the doors off the rest of the league. Again, this is a middle infielder here, so he is a premium if you can get him on a deal, if you look at other middle infielders like a Tatis's first run and Corey Seager's, half the price or, 60% of the price, like jump on him. He's the second unluckiest hitter for hitters with 300 plate appearances. So I'll explain where that number comes from in that video upcoming, but 0.341 WOBA, 341 WOBA, if you actually watch baseball, I don't need to say the point. 409 expected WOBA. He's the 8th biggest underperformer in terms of expected slugging. So you're talking doubles, triples, homers relative to singles. Finally taking a big jump though. He headed into the All-Star break on a huge upswing. So he might get hot price-wise, and he's definitely going to get hot in the second half of the season. His last 50 plate appearances, his expected WOBA is 525. That would be the most in the majors. If he actually realized that number for a full season, it would be the best in the majors by 40 points, which I talked about the difference between, a great player and a Hall of Famer and a scrub being 10%, like a 200 batting average or 300 batting average. That's half of that. He would be adding a half onto the best player in the league. So yeah, that's a lot if he could actually realize it. And unlike a guy like Christian Walker, who I brought up, he's the biggest underperformer. Corey Seager plays in a park that's league average for home runs and doubles and everything for left-handed hitters, and he's a left-handed hitter. So he doesn't have that impediment. It's just a matter of truly being unlucky. So again, like 22 home runs, just like Walker, an 804 OPS isn't bad, but again, his expected WOBA is 409, but his WOBA is 341. That's the worst by far he's had in years. He's underperforming. Again, look, his X slug, top 4% of the league, but his actual slugging, I can pull it up here, 480. So what was that difference? 480 compared to 609. Like that's a huge difference. So if he can actually realize those numbers, Corey Seager is just going to be going gangbusters in the second half of the season. And he is an all-star. People know Corey Seager was. He came out hitting like crazy for the LA Dodgers when he was a rookie and in his first few seasons. And then he tailed off, and then he signed a big deal in Texas. And he's just underperforming what he should be. The results just haven't matched the output. And if you buy him low, he could be a big time swing by the end of it. So those are my 10 guys to target. You can target the guys like Yordan Alvarez and the guys like Mike Trout and the Vlad Guerreros, but you're going to pay a high price. If you want deals, if you want guys who produce similarly to the guys that other people are paying up for, this is where to start, especially towards the end of this video. Those guys I'm really excited about, and these are all guys I'm going to target on my own because, again, I'm not a whale. I'm not coming in with massive amounts of capital to throw at these guys. I'm playing it low, and I'm trying to find deals and play my way up. So these are my 10 guys to focus on, 10 hitters and pitchers to target out of the gate, and hopefully their prices match that. Don't y'all drive these prices up too much because I'm competing for them too. So, but this is who I'm going to be going after. If you want to bid against me, go for it. Again, before I get out of here, like, subscribe. If you liked the kind of stuff that I'm telling you, I'm going to be doing it for the rest of the season and going forward as long as I'm playing So Rare, because I love to do this. I'm a numbers nerd. So yeah, give this video a like, get us more people to interact with, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter at LexHooper, at LEXHOOPER, and we can talk baseball, and you can tell me where I'm wrong, and hopefully I can keep finding some guys under the radar for you going forward. But until then, I will talk to you. Cannot wait for Sorare MLB to drop Tuesday, July 19th. That's tomorrow for me, and I'm raring to go. I'll see you then.